Hey everyone, I'm Tyler Metcalf and I watched the film so you don't have to. On this video, we're taking a look at the first game of the NBA season, the Houston Rockets versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, Gilgeous-Alexander went into MVP mode. Alperen Sengun looked like an all-NBA first team type of player, and if that shot's for real all year, watch out folks, because he's going to be awesome. And this was a really, really fun game. Both teams, a lot to improve on, but what we're going to focus on today is Amen Thompson, Reed Sheppard, and the Houston Rockets point guard conundrum, opportunity, whatever you want to phrase it as. There's a lot to figure out there. And I think there's a lot to learn here, mainly that Amen Thompson needs the ball more and to get the heck out of the corners. Let's take a look. Obviously, just one game. A lot of time for things to change and improve and develop and grow and all that kind of stuff. But we got actual NBA basketball left. So let's take a look at what worked, what didn't in the point guard department for the Houston Rockets, and what we can keep an eye on going forward. Welcome to Film School. Let's dive in. So throughout his career so far with the Rockets, Amen Thompson has really, really surprised me with how good of a cutter he is. And I know that he's found a lot of opportunities crashing from the corners, going baseline to generate offensive rebounds and, get easy buckets at the rim, cutting. But I think he's aged out of that. I think he's aged out of the not the cutting and off ball movement and all that stuff, but aged out of having to be put in the corner. He's too skilled, too athletic, too good of a playmaker to be just spotting up in the corner because, one, he doesn't really impact the offense at all in those situations. I appreciate that he was letting it fly a little more, but we saw so many issues. Now, I just from the start, one of the pluses, and this was kind of the only one of the very few positive possessions that came from a man in the corner, is just this baseline cut, because every time he's out there, defenders are ignoring him completely. So Cason Wallace ball watching a little bit. Amen does a great job cutting baseline. He's done this the last couple of years to tremendous success. Sengun finds him. Easy layup. Great. Awesome play. The problem is that most of it resulted in this type of spacing where Steven Adams is in the dunker spot getting doubled. Cason Wallace, he's kind of occasionally peeking over, but he is so unafraid of Amen Thompson letting it fly that, and he's got both feet in the paint while Sengun is in the middle of the post, and he's one pass away. Sengun ends up having to kick it out. Most NBA players who are spotting up in the corner are letting this fly, and Amen does, but there's zero concern about OKC or from OKC with Amen Thompson making those shots, and it was one of those clear defensive directives of, hey, if he makes them, cool, whatever, we'll live with it. Here again, we see him in the corner, AJ Mitchell helping way off, just trying to take away Steven Adams, give Jalen Williams a little more help, and we see that Sengun has a size mismatch here. I know Cason Wallace is an awesome defender, but this is a mismatch for Sengun. Once he gets in the post against Wallace, now Jalen Williams can go double immediately because he knows AJ Mitchell is fronting Steven Adams, and again, Amen Thompson wide open in the corner. Ball ends up getting kicked out, a little low, but the shot should be going up 100 times out of 100, and instead, short closeout, ball swings, and nothing. We get nothing out of that. We get nothing out of, or the Rockets get nothing out of Sengun drawing two in the post, forcing the second mismatch in the post with Steven Adams, and they're allowing OKC to just leave one of the Rockets players completely wide open in the corner because they're not afraid of him out there, and rightfully so, because Amen still has yet to prove that he can knock down that shot. This time we see him in the dunker spot, flares out to the corner, and really similar thing. Cason Wallace isn't worried about him at all, and that allows him to help off strong side corner. You don't help off strong side corner in the NBA. You don't do it in college. You're starting to not be able to do it in high school too, but they weren't afraid of Amen Thompson, and by putting Thompson in the corner, it just screws up all of the potential spacing opportunities for Şengün, where he should be able to go at Chet, awesome defender in his own right, and that's tough enough for Şengün to try and score on Chet one-on-one. Really fun one-on-one matchup, especially in the post with those two, but having to also then deal with an awesome defender in Cason Wallace digging at the ball here, trying to disrupt things and resulting in a shot like that just because they don't care about Amen Thompson in the corner, that's a lot to deal with and really limits what they can do offensively. And here we can see just the lack of chemistry where when Reed Sheppard is running the point, we get Amen Thompson spotting up in the corner, opposite side, high pick and roll. Sheppard comes off that screen. I love this cut by Amen, but this is where the lack of chemistry comes into play because they clearly haven't played together enough. Sheppard it's been ingrained in him that, hey, when you're running that high pick and roll and you see the weak side defender really cheat over and rotate hard to tag the roller, corner shooter's going to be open. And, that's what that's what Sheppard's mind is telling him. And that's where he goes with the ball. He probably can't even really see Amen start to cut here just because of the size and the traffic here. Great cut by Thompson because, again, Cason Wallace doesn't care about him out there. He cuts baseline, ton of space, but Sheppard is anticipating him staying there. Total miscue. When Amen Thompson is in the corner, at least in this game, it really looked like the defense didn't care about him at all there, and it really disrupted a lot of what Houston was trying to do on the offensive end of the floor. Now, if we instead just think about keeping this same five out here for Houston, but instead get Amen out of the corner and instead put Reed there, and this is a tough game for Reed. The shot looks good, but he really struggled to create space on ball at all, and OKC targeted him relentlessly on defense, and we'll get into that in a little later, unfortunately. But we know that Sheppard is a good shooter, and by putting him on ball as much as Houston did and putting Amen in the corner as much as they did, they're counteracting both of these guys' strengths, where Amen's so aggressive and athletic and dynamic getting downhill with the ball from the middle of the floor, and Sheppard is such a good off-ball shooter, especially just spotting up, that by putting Reed on ball and Amen off ball, you're not getting the benefit of where they both thrive. So if instead all we did here was put Sheppard in the corner and Amen on ball here and keeping Amen at the top of the arc in the middle of the floor where he can attack in a lot of different areas, things would probably look different. If this is if this is Reed in the corner, as Şengün attacks middle, Jalen Williams is a little less aggressive to help over because AJ Mitchell can't help down quite as aggressively as he is, which would then either leave Şengün a one-on-one post up against Cason Wallace, or if Jalen Williams then does rotate over, AJ Mitchell is probably having to play on the backside a little more of Steven Adams, which could potentially lead to a lob. Or let's say OKC defends this the exact same way, then Şengün is kicking out to Reed Sheppard, who's catching it wide open in the corner while his defender is closing out with both feet still in the paint. It's just simple spacing, simple reorganizing the pieces on the chessboard can create a lot of different looks and put guys in better spots to succeed. Similarly on this one, if instead this is Amen operating the high pick and roll and Sheppard in the corner, Cason Wallace probably isn't helping off quite that aggressively. If he is, then cool. Reed Sheppard's not cutting baseline here, and Amen Thompson's going to be able to probably, one, see him in the corner, and two, know that he can kick out to him because he's not going to be cutting. If Cason Wallace is instead staying a little more home on Sheppard, a little more wary of his spot-up shooting, that frees up Adams on the roll, or it puts Hartenstein in a much more difficult position, having to guard the elite athleticism of Thompson trying to get downhill, and puts Hartenstein in a position where he has to make a decision to try and cut off Thompson or step to Steven Adams. Just simple reorganizing the pieces on the floor can really, really change the effectiveness of both Thompson and Sheppard on the offensive end. Now, the flip side of that is that Houston has to trust Sheppard in those situations where he is wide open off the ball on the weak side. Now, this is a Kevin Durant mid-range pull-up. I'm not going to fault him too much because he's one of the best scorers of all time. I get it. But I think this is also a testament to Houston's chemistry right now. I'm not going to say problems because it's game one with some really important new pieces, but we can see what it can look like here in terms of space creation and what Thompson can do when he's instead operating at the top of the arc and in the middle of the floor and cutting from there instead of from the corner. So as Durant is posting up Case and Wallace, obviously a lot of attention is being paid to him. They're, again, completely ignoring Thompson, but Thompson's done a really good job of, throughout his career, of being active and cutting off ball when defenders ignore him. So as he cuts here, he pulls Shea with him, Chet rotates down, and all 5 defenders are now in the paint. And this isn't uncommon for OKC. They do this a lot, and they're so good at flying out to weak side shooters, either running them off the line, closing out short under control. So not an uncommon look, but this cut by Thompson does a really good job of further pulling down SGA and putting even more attention on KD. Sheppard does a great job lifting out of the corner, improve that passing lane to get out from behind Dort. Durant is focused on the rim, ends up taking a tough jumper over Wallace and Holmgren, but we can see what the scoring gravity of Kevin Durant generates in terms of attention, combined with the off-ball movement of Amen Thompson cutting middle to free up guys like Tari Eason, who had a rough game, and Reed Sheppard, who also had a rough game, on the weak side. So these types of situations, I'm really excited to see whether that's Şengün down here or Kevin Durant. They're going to have the ball down on this low post a lot, and just by simply putting Sheppard in the corner and Thompson at the top of the arc to cut that way instead of from the weak side, it gives Thompson the ability to help defenders with him to his movement and then free up weak side shooters as well. Houston just has to find them. Now, I know the initial pushback on giving Amen more on-ball creation responsibilities and letting him play more of that pure point guard role is, well, he can't shoot. Fair. I get it. It doesn't matter because he's such a freakish athlete that he can get wherever he wants on the court. He's a really good playmaker, and he continues to showcase that he's super comfortable finishing through contact, setting up teammates, and just relentlessly getting paint touches. So when you surround him with either an awesome screen and an awesome screening partner with Steven Adams, or a really dynamic pick and roll partner with Şengün, and solid off-ball shooters like Jabari Smith, Reed Sheppard, Kevin Durant, Tari Eason typically, there are so many different ways that he can really punish a defense. As we saw throughout this game, the more they let Thompson operate with the ball in the middle of the floor, good things tended to happen. So here we see Houston trying to just get this early post up to Şengün. Holmgren's doing a great job of denying it, and really, really good spacing. Thompson can't quite get that pass to him, so instead he's like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to be a freak athlete. Does a great job of crossing over Case and Wallace, who's an insane defender, and then just blows past him. What that drive does now draws the help rotations from both low men. Now, obviously, Thompson is kicking out to Josh Okogie, who isn't exactly an elite shooter, but the process here is exactly what you want to see. Even on that strong side, Thompson probably should instead be kicking out to Reed Sheppard in the corner since AJ Mitchell is dropping so far in. But since Hartenstein is in the middle of the lane and is totally left Okogie open, I'm guessing that's just where Amen's instincts went. Great process, but instead, if he just makes that kick out to Reed Sheppard instead, or if that's Jabari Smith in the corner, or, a slightly more competent shooter, Kevin Durant. If this is instead Kevin Durant above the break and Jabari Smith in the corner, we're probably talking about a wide open 3 points or Hartenstein's a little less eager to rotate that aggressively, and Amen's getting 2 points at the rim. So overall, really, really good process. And with just a different piece in that corner, odds are it could be a very different result. Another high pick and roll, Steven Adams, and a lot of space to attack. It's that Amen kind of presents that same pick and roll coverage conundrum that Zion Williamson does. Obviously, very two different athletes, but Amen's strength and explosiveness and speed, it's that tough balance of, all right, do we give him that runway to attack down into because we can go way under and you're not worried about the shot, or do you try and play him tight to not give him that runway and try and disrupt stuff early? They're playing drop here, and he just does a really good job of continuing to probe since both primary defenders are pulled towards Amen, since he's now below the free throw line. Chet Holmgren has to rotate down to Steven Adams, which leaves Şengün wide open. If he continues to shoot it like he did last night, the shot has to go up. And that's a wide open look more often than not. And just a simple, smart decision by Amen, being able to collapse the defense, kick out to an open teammate on the wing, and it ends up with, the shot rimming out. But again, process. Another high pick and roll here, using Tari Eason as the screener. And again, we see that 5 out. There's no one clogging the paint for Thompson to get downhill as he attacks. Caruso's, playing really aggressive gap coverage. AJ Mitchell is pursuing him. Really good job of using a little hesitation to engage Holmgren. A little hesitation there. Keeps Holmgren engaged. Doesn't allow him to flare back out to Eason. Thompson just continues to get deeper in the paint. Pulls all 3 defenders with him. Now leaves Aaron Wiggins in a 1-on-2 situation between Eason and Jabari Smith. Perfect pass out to Eason. Wide open 3. Eason struggled all game, but good job knocking down that shot. And I would guess throughout the totality of the season, that's a shot he's going to make more than he did last night. Even from just a scoring perspective, though, and this 5 out, being able to space the floor and by taking Amen out of the corner, where on those previous possessions we saw where when Amen was in the corner here or down here, these defenders were able to just basically sit in the paint and dare him to shoot. But instead, by putting the ball in his hands, it opens up the lane, has to keep those help defenders a little more honest. And as Houston's trying to free up Kevin Durant here, Chet Holmgren keeps peeking over his shoulder because he's not trying to give one of the best scorers of all time an easy look off ball. Amen recognizes his single coverage, just goes right at Wallace, spins against him, uses his size, athleticism, finishes with the easy 2. Similar concept again. And he's got Aaron Wiggins out here on an island, good spacing. Instead, Josh Okogie down in the dunker spot. And he just goes right at him, does a great job lowering that shoulder. But it's all from that first step and having that ball in his hands. If instead Amen's in this in the strong side corner, SGA's helping off way more than he is now. Right here, he's kind of stunting at him, but he can't commit because Jabari Smith is a competent enough shooter that he can't just leave him wide open in the strong side corner. Amen blows past Wiggins, lowers his shoulder, gets him leaning, stops on a dime, drops in the floater. It's just kind of too easy once he gets that runway in the middle of the floor. High pick and roll, now he has Chet in retreat mode. Lowers his shoulder, shoves him off. Probably should have gotten a foul here as well, but finishes through the contact. And it's, again, help defenders can't cheat off because you can't cheat off Jabari in the strong side corner. Şengün was shooting the crap out of it the entire game. And you're going to leave Kevin Durant wide open? Probably not. But since Amen has the ball in the middle of the floor with so much room to operate, he's able to put defenders on their heels and create one-on-one matchups that he can regularly abuse because of his freak athleticism. When Van Vliet unfortunately got hurt, the optimistic view was, all right, maybe this is a opportunity for Houston to get Reed Sheppard real point guard minutes, and maybe Amen really grows in that role. I think Amen should be the answer And I'm unfortunately starting to really worry about Sheppard. I like him more in that off ball role on the offensive end. We saw how much he struggled to create space throughout that entire game as more of a true point guard. And the bigger concern is he couldn't defend anyone. Now, he had a couple nice deflections because his hands have always been really good, but there's just no physicality in his game. And he just doesn't. And that goes back to Kentucky, which we'll get to in a second as well. But big staple of Ime Udoka teams is, hey, we're going to defend. And if he doesn't trust you to defend, you might not play. And I'm worrying that that may be the case with Reed here. I mean, he just gets turned so easily here because it's SGA. He's the MVP. And again, it's one game, but this is a continuing thread. SGA does this to a lot of guys, but we can see Sheppard not even look to kind of play with a little physicality and instead is trying to reach across Shea's body. And I love how low Shea gets here. He's just a freak with that stuff, but does a really good job of countering that. And now Sheppard, just one simple counter move and Sheppard's totally out of the play. Shea ends up getting fouled. They called it out of bounds, but he got free throws out of it. And here, Case and Wallace, that's way too easy. There's zero resistance here from Reed, where he's trying to shade him middle, and just a simple crossover attacks that high foot, and Sheppard just opens up so much, and that's a free driving lane. He basically never initiates contact, never tries to bump Wallace off his spot, and that's about as easy of a layup as you could possibly get in an NBA game. And then here, Lou Dort has grown a ton on the offensive end. He shouldn't be torching you off the dribble this easily. Just drives baseline, and again, it's just one simple move. Spins back against him. There's no resistance from Reed. In this first one with Shea, it's just one move behind the back, and he's gone. With this next one, Case and Wallace, it's a little hang dribble, crossover, and he's gone. And with Dort here, drive baseline, spin, and he's gone. There's no physicality. There's no resistance. There's no, I hate to throw out the T word, but there's no toughness with Sheppard's defense. And it's the complete inverse of basically everyone else on this Rockets team. And if he's going to keep defending like this, teams are going to hunt him relentlessly on that end of the floor. And to make up for it, he better be shooting the crap out of it. And so far, that unfortunately hasn't been the case. Again, I know, one game, but the more concerning thing is that it's one game that continues to be a trend from what we saw in college. Now, at Kentucky, Sheppard's defensive playmaking numbers were awesome because of how good his hands were, but it's like a mirror reflection of what we saw in that Thunder game, where there's no resistance at the point of attack, there's no physicality on ball, and ball handlers are able to just drive past him with ease. This was an issue then. It's an issue now. And my concern is that if Sheppard doesn't really kind of figure that stuff out, I still really like him as a player. I think there's so much more on the offensive end if he's put in slightly different positions to find a ton of success. But if he's going to keep defending and doing stuff like this that he was able to get away with in college, you can't get away with this in the pros. And if you're continuing to defend like this on Ime Udoka's team, he's probably not going to play you all that much longer, which really, really sucks because Sheppard had so much excitement, and I'm not willing to give up on his game or his future or potential or anything like that. But I'm just worried about what his opportunities, if they could get limited down the road, and what that could ultimately lead to in terms of his long-term development. It's just one game, and the Houston Rockets are in a really brutal position where they're trying to figure out their rotation and their offensive creation responsibilities in a crucial spot after losing their veteran point guard in Van Vliet not that long ago. So they're having to really retool their roster, their deployment of who goes where and when, and it's a lot to figure out in a very short time. So it's not totally shocking that it looked a little clunky in game one. Now, what it looks like in game one, in the end, isn't that big of a deal. What's important is, does it look different in game 20? in game 40, in game 75, and in the postseason. There's a lot of time to figure it out, but my hope is that the Rockets just lean more into giving Amen Thompson more of those true point guard minutes and responsibilities and leaving him in the middle of the floor to operate and taking him out of the corners. By putting him in the corners, they're basically just conceding those possessions and making life so much difficult for guys like Şengün and Kevin Durant, who could be incredible scorers on this team. But if they're trying to operate either on the middle of the floor or say, just anywhere, while Amen Thompson is having to spot up in the corner, they're always going to see a second defender, and their life is going to be made so much more difficult. Instead, by putting Amen in the middle of the floor, they could really benefit by leveraging his athleticism, both on and off ball, his ability to get paint touches, to draw defenders, to cut from new, unique angles, and then also moving Reed Sheppard, who's an awesome shooter off the ball, put him in those positions to either punish weak side defenders who over rotate and over help on those cuts or post ups, or force those weak side defenders to stay more at home on Reed Sheppard and not be willing to give up those wide open threes, which then in turn leaves more cutting space for Amen or more one-on-one matchups for Şengün and Durant in the mid-range and the post. So the Rockets have some really intriguing tools and pieces that they can move around. Fascinated to see how it continues to develop throughout this season, but it was a fun game and a lot to learn. Very excited to see what it looks like in the next couple weeks.